Hi, I'm Con Divers. I am the scriptwriter and director of photography on It Feels Like This.
Hi, I'm Harriet. I'm the director for It Feels Like This.
Can you tell our listeners a little bit about what role you play in the creation of It Feels Like This?
So my role is that I conceived of the idea. It was originally a short story that I wrote in summer, and then I kind of realized that, oh, this could actually make for an interesting film. And so I started working with Harriet into adapting that story into a script, because obviously a script and a narrative short story are really different. And so we've basically just gone through a series of iterations to get to the point where we have now. And my other role is the camera operator, basically, and I help to decide what equipment we're using and why, and what the people watching will actually see.
Yeah, and I do everything else. No, I'm in charge of making sure that the acting performance is good and sort of pointing everyone in the right direction. And, you know, I get to be in charge, and I sometimes get to wear a fun hat. So, you know, and I get to sit there and go, I don't like it and I don't know why. And then Con has to fix it.
Yeah. It's I mean, when it's like it fails the vibe check, I'm the one who has to like sort
yeah, but I get to
vibe check failed.
Yeah. I mean, I do like other things. I do a lot of like meetings and important, difficult things. I am selling myself short, but mainly I go, this is what I think.
Yeah. How do you know when it passes the vibe check then?
It's weird. You just get a feeling, and I think reading through all these different drafts, you start to see, oh, this is what this character would say in this particular moment, and this is how it would look and how it would feel. It's almost as if, for me, I always try to imagine, you know, because it's about two boys struggling with sort of friendship and learning that you need to lean on each other. And obviously, I have never been a teenage boy, but I do know what it's like to have that moment of going, oh, I need someone else here and I need to lean on a friend. So I've spent so much time with these characters that after a while you just sort of instinctively know, and you learn to go, that's not correct, but that is. And that's a vibe. And then I go, everyone else do this now. And everyone else goes, oh my God, I never thought of that. And I go, I know. That's what I do.
So you mentioned that the journey with this film started back in 2019. Can you walk me through a little bit like how it's developed across the past 2 years?
Yeah, so I told a lie earlier. I said that the first version of this story was the short story, but actually it was a series of treatments that I wrote for when I was doing my semester abroad. And I had this class that was really annoying because it was really short and it wasn't a full credit class. And every time I went in with a story idea, the professor would go, okay, now take the story idea and take it to the day before your story starts, or like take it to the day after your story starts. And I'm there like, but I started my story at this time because that's the time I thought was right. Mm-hmm. But of course it does mean that you get very used to not being too precious with your idea, which is really beneficial because you can't be, because people are going to be giving you lots of feedback, but some of it won't be what you think and feel. Some of it, I mean, most of it is legitimate, of course. And that's just how developing it works, really, is you got to listen to feedback. But yeah, so off the back of that treatment, I wrote the short story, which is the first full iteration of the story. But that first version is honestly kind of, it's not the same story anymore as the script now. Like, originally it was that one of the characters had stopped replying to texts, and so the main character kind of goes on this journey to like go find him, and it's about that. And then but this version is that they were already friends and they're in a tennis tournament together, but they need to practice, and that is what brings them together. It's not this thing of like, oh, friends stopped replying. It's that they're both really aware of each other, but neither of them is talking to each other, and that's really frustrating for both of them. Yeah, it's just like any friendship where you can sense something's not quite right on the other end, but you
Yeah.
don't know what. And then because they're not talking to you,
It's really
you don't
nice
talk
to see
them.
how it's developed and to sort of keep those initial through lines. And it definitely helps as a director because you get to spend so much time with these characters and you see them grow that you know them like the back of your hand. And I like the fact that now we have to make a film that's based around tennis, as neither Connor or I know anything about tennis, which I think has been really good. That we were like, do you know what sport neither of us have ever played? Tennis.
Well, sometimes things are just a helpful plot device and you've just got to go for it. You can't always
Yeah.
plot device.
And it looked great on the poster, so.
Exactly.
Perfect. Football gets too much spotlight, in my opinion, anyway, so it's nice having that different angle there.
Exactly.
But yeah, I was wondering, how did you get the idea for the two characters?
I think kind of originally they weren't all that distinct. But I mean, obviously the first idea and really the thing that hasn't been mentioned yet is that one of them has wings growing out of his back. So that's important to mention. That's
the elephant in the room, big fucking
wings.
Yeah,
Imagine
exactly.
just sprouting wings in the
He's
middle of the
like, we keep going, he needs to get something off his chest. Well, it's his back because he's growing wings. Get it?
I love that.
Yeah, no. But I think the imagery of like somebody growing wings originally came from, and you guys know that I love this album, Transangelic Exodus by Ezra Furman's fantastic album. So good, so
Brilliant
rich with
record.
imagery. And like I think part of this film really just came from my desire to like make that album into a film. Even though
I love that
this story is nothing like Transangelic Exodus, but I've always wanted to make a film of kind of the idea, I think, of just someone unwillingly and in a very uncomfortable way changing, and that was kind of part of that story for Cain, who's the one who's getting wings growing out his back, was that he is really uncomfortable with the idea, because I think oftentimes growing wings in media is seen as a very angelic thing or like a glorious thing, or especially in like fantasy films, it's kind of like the final ascension or whatever. But Cain is very uncomfortable with it and he wants to hide it, but it's getting to the point where he can't anymore. So that's what forces him to make difficult decisions, is that he can't keep on like this. And then Lee took longer to develop because it was kind of like, who is the counterpoint to this boy? He was kind of a bit more shy, a bit more sensitive, maybe not originally, but made that way because of his circumstances of this thing happening to him. And I thought that it was kind of a nice, almost kind of like an opposites attract thing, where Lee is he's a little bit more athletic, he's a little bit more like, like it's like who's going to get the girlfriend first out of the two of them? It's Lee. And he's just more competitive, more of a lad really, doesn't really want to talk about what's going on in his life either. And accordingly, Cain is the first to break the silence really and help them to, move past this difficulty they're having.
I was wondering, because as you said, obviously there's quite a lot of angelic imagery in it. Cain is, of course, a biblical name. How did you come around to picking that?
I think I just looked through. This is me showing my inner writer here, but like just googling like most popular names like 1999 and seeing what came up.
Fair enough.
Yeah, it's not very exciting. Sorry.
To be fair, when you first showed it to me, I was like, oh, like Cain and Abel with the head bashing. Is there going to be head bashing? And you were just sitting there going, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I was like going into this whole spiel, like, and then the wings, and then it's all the Bible, and then we can like put it together, and then there's like, oh, it's gonna show many different angles, and you were just like, I just thought it was pretty.
Yeah, I knew as well. I knew a boy in secondary school who was called Cain, so I think that's where I maybe was like, oh, that's a name that people have. It's a real
Yeah. Whereas I went for like the biblical angelical route of it all and was like, what does it mean?
Two very different votes. Who would you say then, as filmmakers who've made a few different things now, who would you say your biggest inspirations are then as screenwriters and directors?
Harriet, do you want to take this first?
Oh, I would say David Fincher, because I love the way he I love David Fincher and I will not stop talking about it. I love the way he crafts a story, and I love that in The Social Network, which is my favorite film, and everyone I know is made to watch it. The way he sort of crafts the story, and that even though the protagonist is so unlikable, and you find yourself going, for God's sakes, all the way through, you still root for him and you still like him. And I think the way that he does characters is incredible, because all of my direction is very character based, because I grew up in theatre, so I started as an actor and then went, no, I don't want people to have to look at me all the time. So I think David Fincher is definitely where I sort of sit with, because his character studies are incredible.
Yeah, David Fincher as well, especially for cinematography. Like, it's just so perfect. It's good. So perfect.
And it's just, without saying anything, you can just look at a frame and go, I know exactly what's happening here. Who's like the character that's got the power, who hasn't, where have they come from, and it's all beautiful. And you know, I'm colorblind as well, and he uses a lot of yellow, and yellow is one of the colors I'm really sure about, so I like that.
Yeah, he's very muddy, isn't he, a lot of his work? But I think for me, in terms of script writing, Taika Waititi, because he's got a very I like a lot of his, especially his earlier work. He has comedy moments. A lot of his films are very funny, obviously. But he also has a lot of character moments, and his comedy comes through in a very natural way, I feel. Like certain comedies, especially like kind of, I don't know, more mainstream big budget comedies, it's like this, it feels sometimes that there's like pause for laughter moments, but with Taika it feels very much like the characters say something and it's kind of dumb, but then they just move on really quickly. They don't really linger on the fact that they just made a joke. I like that, and I like how heartfelt a lot of his work is. I would say, also Fincher. Also, oh man, I'm going to butcher his name, that's really embarrassing. Yorgos Lanthimos, who is a Greek director of The Favourite and Killing of the Sacred Deer. And his work's really nice because it's very perfect as well, like Fincher, but it's also really weird. There's just a lot of weird stuff that happens, and he doesn't really explain why some of the weird things are happening. He's just like, yeah, boy cursed this person's family, now the family's dying, and you're along for the ride. And I'm like, that's great. But I would say those three mostly.
Cool. That's a nice varied mix there.
How would you say those influences have affected you as filmmakers, both specifically?
I think Fincher encourages me to be more perfectionist, I think.
Yeah, and spend more time with the characters and with the narrative as a whole, and realize how things function, I think, because a lot of people will either go, no, this is the narrative, and there just happens to be characters in it, whereas Fincher goes for the characters first, and it's no, you can't have, the narrative doesn't matter, how are these characters moving through life, and then the narrative forms around it. And I love the way that it's always a relationship study, and I think that's very important.
I think as well, I just really like I think a lot of Fincher's work it's very aspirational for a student filmmaker to have the time and the money and all the people telling him, yes, he can do 50 takes of that one shot of a character walking. Like, it is kind of ridiculous, a lot of the stuff that he does. But I think it's something that you need to aspire to, in the sense of you need to aspire to make something perfect, because if you don't, then because you're a student filmmaker, you're not going to reach perfect. Like, it's not going to happen. Stuff's going to go wrong. You're going to make mistakes. But if you're aiming for just right, then even when you fall short, hopefully it will be a little bit less short than if you were originally aiming for that good enough kind of perspective.
It will then be bad. You want to aim for perfection, and then it will at least be fantastic rather than anything else. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
I like that. I like that a lot. What would you want people then, upon watching It Feels Like This, what do you want people to take home with them then?
Talk to your mates, see what's going on. If there's something wrong, ask.
Yeah. And if one of your friends starts mysteriously bleeding from their back, maybe they're growing wings, and maybe just take them to a hospital, instead of doing what I won't spoil it, but instead of doing what our characters do, which is rather unsanitary.
Yeah. Well, they're teenage boys. They don't know anything.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, if that's how I'd react, I'd just go like, oh, okay. I think that's what's great about our film is that they react in a very natural way in an unnatural situation, and that's one of the things I love the most about Con's writing. It's people doing things that make sense in a supernatural setting. But yeah, talk to your friends, and also it's gonna be okay. You won't be 16 forever. You're going to be fine. And when you turn 20 and 21, you're going to make much larger mistakes with lots more money involved. And that's going to blow those out of proportion. It's fine. Yeah.
So where can our listeners, viewers, etc. go and support your film?
Well, we have a main sort of webpage at latentfilms.co.uk/it feels like this, and each word has a dash in between. That's the main place, and that's got that's the hub for all the other links to all the different places, the crowdfunder, to our Instagram, to our Facebook.
Yeah, and if you go on to our Instagram, which is at It Feels Like This Film, you can find all of our links there, and our link to our Kickstarter, and the Kickstarter is just Kickstarter/It Feels Like This Film, but it's easier to access through our Instagram. And you can drop us a like and follow us all individually.
Fab.
You know, people give us money, which is nice because we like money, and money helps us make, bigger and better films. We offer perks. So for say like £2, which is our lowest amount, you can get just a personalized thank you, and we'll be very, very grateful for it, all the way up to like 150, where you get like a book and a diary, and it's got stickers, and I love stickers, and it's got all the diagrams in and a lot of behind the scenes knowledge, and like an annotated script and posters and things like that. And so it's all about welcoming people into film, because I'm a very big believer in breaking that curtain between saying like, no, this is our secret little film world. I want everyone to know what's going on, because it fascinates me, and I know that when I start talking to my non-film students friends, they go, that's amazing, that's incredible, how did you, it's about letting people in. And also we need money to make our film, so it's a double-edged sword, but made of like cotton candy.
Tell a friend.
Tell a friend. Tell all your friends.
You know what, if you donate, you can be really cool and be like, I help support indie filmmaking.
Yeah.
Local indie filmmaking set in Salford.
All the cool kids are doing it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All the cool kids are doing it. Don't do drugs, kids. Donate to indie film.